All righty, what's going on, y'all? Happy Thursday. My name's Taylor. We kind of incorporate that in. It's kind of it's an unofficial day of the week. Just to let y'all know. Anyways, we are also live. I confirmed it 16 times because so I got introduced to y'all through Evan Kirkham with Outlier Colorcast. And we went live with him, or at least I thought we went live, and we didn't go live. We did the entire interview, and it was never live, and so we had to do it again. So now I'm like super
one of our best ones ever.
Yeah, it was such a great interview, and I was like, oh, damn.
That's the story of my life. I do something great. I'm like, did anybody see it? Did we catch it? No, just me? Okay.
Exactly. Okay. So really excited to hang out with y'all today. For those of you who are tuning in or kind of scrolling through the interwebs and catch this now or in the future, what Unicorn Finders is this is a podcast created by me, Jake, and Dan. Dan is not on the call today. Dan is watching a show in Red Rocks. So it's good for him. So we started this when COVID hit back in March of 2020, and Jake, Dan, and I are actually friends outside of work. You can actually be friends with your colleagues outside of work, and we enjoyed hanging out with each other, but we didn't know when we were going to hang out again. So we started this thing, and this thing is kind of this thing's definitely changed, and we've now our goal is to our unofficial slogan is bringing on really cool companies that are doing really cool shit that you probably haven't heard of yet. So that's what this is. We're really excited to have Grazzy and the founding team on the call today. So really excited. So I do want to give obviously the opportunity to do some quick intros. So Courtney, if you want to go first, introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Courtney White. I lead growth and operations at Grazzy. I joke sometimes I'm the janitor, and sometimes when Russ isn't around, I help run the business. So great to be here.
By that, she means she cleans up my messes.
Russ,
a nice way of saying it.
Yeah, hey guys, I'm Russ Lemmer. I'm founder and CEO. We've been working on this little passion project from an ideation stage since probably late 2017, early 2018. And I'm grateful to be here. I like to do the big idea stuff, and then Courtney does a lot of the work. So together, we make a pretty great combo where 1 + 1 actually equals 3.
I love that. And then also, by the way, Russ, I'm going to give you props. Maybe one of the best headshots I've ever seen. It looks like a painting. Yeah. So like legit, one of the best headshots I've ever seen. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, you can thank Courtney for that too. All I did was show up.
That's awesome. Great. Again,
I tried to connect you on LinkedIn before I even knew you were coming on just because of the headshots.
Yeah. I was like, man. All right. So Grazzy, Russ, what is it?
Yeah. So it's a number of things, but we talk about it a lot as maybe the future of work and the future of payments. And so when we think about the problem that we're solving and why it matters is voluntary turnover in the US is $100 billion problem. And some folks think that that's a low estimate. And it's like, if you can start to address that, you can split the surplus, right? Reduce whatever that cost is, capture a little bit of value, share it back with your customer and user base, and it becomes pretty magical. And so, if that's the big thing, that's a little bit abstract. And so where I like to start is I ask anybody, have you ever had that moment in the last 5-10 years where you wanted to leave a tip or tip someone real time and you didn't have cash? And you're like,
literally,
we call it the double tap. You're like, oh, God, I'm sorry. I'll get you next time. And you go for that empathetic appeal, but in your heart, you don't have it. And so when you ask the market that, right, 84% of people come back and say, of course, yes, I have that moment. I have it all the time. And it happens at ballet stands. It happens all over hotels. It happens in so many different instances where the lack of cash, the scarcity problem, the analog constraint really frustrates what we call both recognition and reward. And so if you can digitally solve the analog constraint, you can maximize folks' earnings. You can create better connection between customer and employee, customer and business. And as folks make more money and they're able to access that digitally the same day, it reduces the overall amount that employers spend on recruiting and retention. And so it's this really virtuous cycle of, hey, I've got this problem real time right now that I don't know how to solve. You put a digital, easy to use platform in front of folks, and it's one solution that solves 3 different problems. And that's why we get excited.
I interrupt you real quick, Jake, and I'm going to ask a question. Nick Martini, we used to work with Nick Martini at Vaco, and he knows Dan really well. He goes, Dan Thompson always does that when the lunch bill shows up. Nick Martini's just throwing darts this morning. Dan's not even here. I love it. Jake, go ahead, man.
Man, that's fantastic. I mean, that's just the classic of finding that market fit, right? Where you're like, let's address a problem that we realize is either here already or coming, and it'll continue to grow, as we live more and more in a cashless world.
Yeah,
right?
One of the things that Jeff Bezos says that I love is when he thought about bringing Prime to market, he said, nobody wakes up and wishes that their package would take a little bit longer to show up, right? So like if you can get that 2 days or sooner, that's meaningful. And it's not exactly the same thing, but I do believe we live in a world currently, and as we look to the future, where nobody wakes up and says, you know what, there's probably going to be more cash available in the future to use from a paper basis and not less. And so we see the future as some approach to the cashless world. And in such case, how are you interacting digitally with the people, the businesses, and the transactions around you?
Yeah. And so how does that work in this case? So I'm going to a hotel. I use the valet.
Sure.
Right? I was just had this experience while I was in Nashville a couple days ago. Used the valet, didn't have any cash on here. I actually asked the guy, I was like, do you have a Cash App? And I'll send you $2 on Cash App. It's so cumbersome, and then it takes it outside of the environment of the hotel and makes it this whole other thing.
Yeah.
What does that look like? How are you doing that?
Right now? So let me answer first a question you didn't ask baked in there, and then I'll answer that question. Because a lot of folks today, they talk about tipping fatigue, right? Like everywhere we go, it asks if you want to leave a tip. And sometimes we find ourselves saying, I don't know if this feels right. And so we talk a lot about enablement versus solicitation. And so when you say, hey, in the moment, do you have Cash App? You're looking for enablement, right? Like you actually have a willingness to share gratitude or gratuity, but you don't have the ability. And that's very different than walking into some airport kiosk where you self-serve and you buy a water and you check out and it's like, do you want to leave a tip?
I do not.
For who? Like what happened? So first we want to solve that enablement problem. And then the next way we think about that is there can't just be one solution, but any of these solutions need to work at the speed of cash, right? So like the guiding principle here is 10 seconds or less. Whatever it would take to reach into your pocket, pull out the source of value, share that source of value with the other person, we need to be able to do. And so a lot of times it takes the form of simple QR codes, right? Like we make the joke coming out of the pandemic, nobody had a better pandemic than the QR code.
I know.
Like it's everywhere.
For real.
And all of a sudden it just
and unicorn finders could not have a better COVID.
Phoenix rises from the ashes. So look, you don't need an app. You don't need to download anything. It's a quick scan. It brings up the profile of that person or that team branded for that property. So it's not a Cash App, Venmo, person-to-person thing. Okay. It works within the constraints of an employer-employee customer relationship. And then all of that on the back end, right? We reporting, compliance, visibility, analytics, all of that to the employers so that they can see, oh, wow, we're really driving effective wage up. But then beyond that, right, we have what we call text to tip as well. So if you want to do a quick short code because you're not using an optical camera, we have things like, hey, you can tap the iPad, you can use NFC. Yeah. And so if you do all of these things at once, you'll find out that some folks want to scan the QR code. My mom was like, I don't really do QR codes, but she will do text, right? Yeah. And then ultimately, if you just use your phone, you tap and you select, but it's just an actual iPod or tablet right there to leave 1, 2, 5, 10, you're done and you can move on. Also what you do is, I would say like the asymmetric value is typically cash requires that real-time moment. And so if you do actually forget to tip the valet, but there's another entree point at the property into Grazzy where you want to leave, I don't know, $5 for housekeeping or the bellman brings bags around. You can tip that person or that team. And then you can also say, oh, and I forgot to do the valet. Let me do that now. Or I can add it, quote, to my shopping cart, so to speak. And then I can tip everybody all at once when I leave the property, or I can even charge it to my room. So like enabling these embedded systems that talk to one another on behalf of the employer and the brand and the employee, which feels like 10 seconds or less magic to the guest at the hotel level is incredibly important. That's awesome. And then once we create that, we move the money around to the right people at the right time that virtually works at the speed of cash. So they instantly can pull it into their own digital wallet or onto their own banking card and quite literally leave their shift, go to 7-Eleven, buy the hot dog and the Slurpee, swipe the card, all in a transaction that happened less than 30 minutes ago.
So Courtney, I have a question for you. Do y'all have exciting stuff coming up?
We do. We joke
that
around.
that you can kind of hint at, right?
Yeah.
Because again, at the end of the day, you don't want to spill all the beans, but just give me some of the beans.
My hair might be slicked back, but it's filled with secrets. So we're working with some of the largest hotel brands in the U.S. We'll be announcing some of those partnerships more broadly this summer. We collaborate with some of the largest payment networks, so Visa Direct. Russ will get into this, I'm sure, but we're raising money. For us, when we think about our growth, I mean, we joke that this actually sounds like impossible, but since the beginning of the year, we've grown 100x. And so what felt like last year, just pushing the boulder up the hill, does anyone care about this?
Right.
Well, all of a sudden, January 1st hit, and I joke that Russ was in LA at a conference, and suddenly we were absolutely flooded. And so many of the conversations we'd had last year, I can't underscore enough just the value of partnering with stakeholders that know more than you, whether that's at a customer level or at a partner level, and just showing up every single week, learning from them, talking to them. And so what was a small group last year were really strategic partners that ultimately pushed that boulder over the hill. And this year has been such a ride. And so many of the announcements that we're excited to make are coming up in the next, I'd say, 2 months. And at that point, all the secrets will come out of this head of hair.
And into this streaming service. Yeah. We'll have you on.
I'll double click on a couple of things there. One is that some of the largest hotels on the planet are saying yes to what it is that we're doing. So we have the big tentpole brands with whom we're working, but also as a singular location that has a complicated and complex operation of multiple towers and thousands of rooms and different types of restaurants and brand promises and valets, all of the thing. We're bringing that to life. And I think, to underscore the 100x growth, that's amazing insofar as you don't actually break as you do it. And so one of the things that we're incredibly proud of with this team, and it goes far beyond Courtney and myself, is stability at scale. Right? Yeah. A lot of people, I think, can do what we do from a 1 to 3 location perspective. But as you get more complex, and as you work with other folks in different systems and realize that you have to change your own system and still make sure that the rising tide lifts all boats, it's incredibly important to make sure that, bending is okay, but don't quite break. And to me, that's been the biggest win, is we've seen this growth and then we've met it actually with team, gumption, resources, and outcomes.
I love that.
How do you, sometimes this might be like a future roadmap piece here, but I don't know about you guys. Sometimes I will get to a bar ahead of time or a restaurant ahead of time, and I'll over tip ahead of time just because I want good service.
Yeah.
How do you kind of solve for that emotional connection that happens with the tip? Hey, you see me giving you this versus exit through the gift shop and tip on the way out for a good service. And what does that look like?
Yeah, it's really no different, right? So if you're in a moment where you can give somebody cash or whatever you would call that source of value, you can do that with paper and you can do that digitally, but you still can make the eye contact. You can have the connection, you can build the relationship. And more importantly, you can now do it anytime you don't see that person, right? Because cash requires you to actually hand it to them. Yeah. The digital system we've built allows you to do it at any point in time. Yeah. And then, the other part of that is then, bar, restaurant, you're like, wait, you scan QR codes to tip people. And it's like, we actually don't do that because there's a transaction that already exists and you can sign on a tip line if you want. What we then do is work with that bar and restaurant to move those digital credit card tips instantly. Because typically they're tied up in credit card processing. A lot of times they get pushed to payroll, or managers have to reconcile the safe that's in the basement or whatever it is. And so we work in a world where we can just do that. Hey, you got $1,000 in tips and they go to these 8 people. You hit send, the money goes over the payment rails directly and ends up in their digital wallet instantly. So
I can see
this is still preserved, but the speed and the flexibility is a lot better.
Yeah.
Well, and ultimately, I think, when we think about the fact that you have a housekeeper, for example, right? Pre-COVID, she made 30% of her wages were based on tips, right? The fact that has just completely gone away. When we think about just service, connected to knowing that the guests are enabled and empowered to say thank you digitally. And then on top of that, they've got fast feedback. And so now all of a sudden, the housekeeper is realizing that a little bit of extra service, those special touches that she's going to do are actually going to be enabled. So it's less about me giving her the $1. It's about the fact that she now knows that day by day, when she's cleaning 13 different rooms, five times out of those 13, she's actually usually getting a tip for that.
Right.
And so it's the trend behavior as well. And as Russ said, the virtuous circle between, I'm working super hard, I'm getting rewarded, I'm getting recognized both from my guests as well as my manager. And so I'm going to stay a little bit longer. I'm going to feel a little bit more seen. And ultimately, we all win in that.
And also, beyond that too, what do you do about the folks where there's, more than 100 million full service car washes?
Oh yeah.
Right. And most of these car washes are going cashless. And all of a sudden the double tap starts to repeat itself, which is, hey, I paid digitally, but can I tip? How do I do it? What do I do? How does it work? And so again, it goes far beyond hotels, which is where we started, but we've got salons and bars and restaurants and car washes and anything that has what I would say is gratuity, W-2, and some excitement around how do we get wages to folks faster so that they're more likely to show up tomorrow and work a little bit harder today is something that we power.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, guys and gals, Russ, I know you got to head to the airport. Thank y'all for hanging out with us. We really, really appreciate it. Anything else that we didn't cover that you want to give a final shout out to?
Yeah, I'll say a lot of times what we do on things like this or presentations I give to investors, right? It is a bit of the hype machine. Hey, everything is awesome and nothing's ever been a challenge. And I would say maybe 3 things if I can, and hopefully this doesn't sound like I'm soapboxing, but success is not linear, right? I think everybody as a habit manual and probably manual for life should pick up Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Yeah.
And one of the metaphors that he uses there, right, is that if you start at 0 degrees and there's a giant block of ice in front of you, it doesn't matter how hard you work as you increase the temperature to 5 degrees, 10 degrees, or 15 degrees. Nothing about that giant ice block changes, and you feel that you're working so hard. And you continue to work so hard, and now you've raised the energy level to 15, 20, 25 degrees, and nothing changes. And you're like, I'm doing something wrong. It's not working. And you don't know when, and you usually don't know why. Typically, you do know how when you look backwards. But at some point, if you have enough belief in the right team and resources, you get the temperature to above 32 degrees, and that giant obstacle in front of you starts to melt. So I tell people, when it doesn't feel good, that's okay. When other people ask you hey, why isn't so-and-so doing this? It's so obvious. That's a great question. That means you should go further and not start to retreat. So that's 1, success is not linear. I'd say 2, if you think you're a big idea guy or gal and you want to dream big things, I would say find your Courtney very, very soon.
Find your Courtney. I love that.
Because you can't do it alone. And the things that I realized, I am good at, and I wanted to be great at everything, I started to hold the business and myself back by trying to be too good at too many things and realizing I actually am not great at these 5 things. And oh my God, Courtney is great at these 5 things. The things that take energy from me actually give energy to Courtney. And so you find this real symbiosis where she can do important things that would otherwise cripple me with anxiety. And we move so much faster. So find someone like Courtney, convince them to join you earlier and get that co-founder instead of that first employee. That's a huge, huge deal. And then the final one, even if you hate it, get your market and your products together sooner. Because what I would tell you is the first time you try anything, any customer is not going to buy what you're selling. They're going to buy what you believe. They're buying that relationship with you. And the promise you make to them is look, I don't know if I have it right, but I want to get it right. And so even if you hate that product, you have a right to ask for business. And then you got to show up and work on that product in that business to show them that you're willing to make the effort. So if you wait until you love your product to ship it, you've waited far too long. Get messy, ship the ugly one, get out there, and then learn, as Courtney said, from the experts. They'll give you the feedback that you just don't yet have.
Russ is taking all his church this morning. That was good.
Dang, Russ.
I know, that was great. That was straight bars right there.
Success is not linear. Find your Courtney and ship the ugly thing.
And get a great headshot.
That's right. You did a great hitch.
Cool. Awesome.
That's
You guys are
amazing.
awesome. Thank you so much. We really enjoyed it, and
Absolutely.
hopefully get to talk
For your
more
flight.
soon.
Yes. You'll have a good
Thanks
one.
so much.
Congrats, man.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting to hear and see their growth.
That's great. I love that, man. I can't tell you the amount of times that I've just gone to a place and it's just like, I don't have anything.
Yeah, I wanted to call it. I'm pretty sure the hotel I was just at was using their text to tip.
Oh, for real?
Nashville, yeah.
That's awesome.
But rightfully so. I think that the branding that they do is not to tie you to Grazzy. It's the brand is to tie you to the hotel, and so
which is brilliant.
great.
Because
right?
what it does is it helps, from like my marketing mind kicks in, and branding is just like that actually empowers a hotel to have even more of like a stickiness.
For sure.
And it's a service offering that they didn't have to create.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised to see if there was an additional pivot or an addition to their suite of products, or if it already exists, where they threw this as an API engine to tie into a Hilton app or a Marriott app, right? So that it's empowered directly through the product that they want you to stay on. In my Marriott Envoy app, I can also tip through it, using Grazzy through any of these tipping points. There it is.
There it is.
Tipping points throughout the property.
I love that.
And that would be
because that would be my biggest thing, right? And I wish we had more time. I love these conversations, and just, I mean, realistically, like we could talk to these founders for like an hour or two, like every. Yeah, I know. Seriously, same. Our schedules just don't allow it. And so like what the thing I'm concerned with, not concerned, I think it's kind of like what you said. It's how many points of access. Like for example, let's say I'm by the pool. Are they going to have like little like cards where I can, tip right there? But then how does that connect with like Anna, who's my server at the pool? Like, for example, like we were at Soho House on Sunday, right? Yeah. And they do kind of this like what I think it's actually a term. I talked to my dad about it, like a mob service in a sense. Like there's no set servers.
It's all pooled. Yeah.
So I don't know. It would just be curious, right? It's like does the server hand you a QR code, or can you do it yourself? You know what I'm saying? It's like
the mob service is probably the easiest problem for them to solve.
That is true.
Because I don't have to hunt down. Man, this server was so great.
That's true.
Specifically
so then maybe it's the other way. Maybe it's like if there is only a set server.
Yeah, the set server that's not tied to giving you a bill. We're just talking servers, right? You're talking about like
because I grew up in the restaurant industry, so it's always people,
like and like housekeepers and like things like that. Like where you don't necessarily know the person, but you knew that your room was cleaned immaculately and there was chocolate on the pillow. You're like, I haven't seen that person, but like that's really cool to be able to tip the group in there and stuff. I did the one. I know we were short on time. The question I wanted to ask them was that as he was heating up the degrees to melt the box of ice, right? How many times did that, like, when did it start to feel, I'm getting close to 30 degrees? How long did that take? How many times did you
Russ, Courtney, if y'all watching, email us and let us know.
Russ, please add us. And so, because there's so many times, there's the old adage of just, how many times did you turn around right before you were about to be at the top of the mountain? Like how many, all those things. And so it's the ones that just risk looking crazy, saying, no, I'm still going all the way through, right? Are the ones that make it, right? So I thought about that too, Jason, employee badge. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, again, Courtney, Russ, if y'all watching this, thank you again for hanging out with us. We appreciate it. Best of success, best of luck for you all. We got a few more founders from the Austin tech scene coming on, just with our guy, Evan Kirkham. Shout out to him. So y'all have a great one. I hope y'all enjoyed this. Go check out Grazzy. The last question I was going to ask too, and we didn't get to it. So Russ, Courtney, let us know. I'm interested if there's like discounted pricing. Like I'm going for my dad's restaurant, right? Like a smaller restaurant. Is there a different price strategy than like a Hilton and a Visa, right? Like you see what I'm saying? Like
to the point of knowing if it was going to be. If it's just pay-per use, like pay-per-pen transaction, or if it's a SaaS model, or like
correct, yeah.
We didn't get to that point down there. You think that both could play in some certain ways 100%. On there, but if it's just if it's pay to play, then that's scalable down also to a small office, especially. But that is the, to Russ' point, the most impressive thing, against some of their competitors. And I know some people at one of their competitors here, what's making them do that is to think the complexity of the property and the scalability, because some of these, you've seen some of these resorts we've gone to around the world that are just, they got 18 different restaurants, and they've got a casino, and then they've got, there's thousands of employees on a single day, right? And so it's like, if you can scale to solve for that, and you allow for
dangerous, make a lot of money.
Well, there's always also like IRS regulations coming down around enforcing taxes on tipping and, and all this stuff. And so like, they're probably leaning heavily into the regulators that are coming against these resorts.
Yeah.
Saying, hey,
well, that's actually, if you go to their website, that's one of the things that they talk about is they already like have the tax compliance or something like that. Like they actually talk about that on their website.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as you know, like there's going to be more and more governmental restrictions on everything. So
yeah, so security, you can trust PCI compliant, P2 protection, cloud-based, and then they said bulletproof reporting and compliance. So yeah, they talk about compliance a few times on their website. So
huge problem they're solving. That's absolutely amazing.
Awesome. So Jason, thank you so much, man. Very cool product. Yeah, I'm glad we got them on. I was pretty stoked when I caught up with Courtney a few weeks ago. So
great founders. Yeah. Wish you all the best. So
absolutely. All right. See you guys. Y'all have a good one. We'll be back next week. Peace.